Hello, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. So good to be here with you. Welcome to this masterclass where we'll get to spend a little time together. I want to share with you some thoughts I have about getting unstuck and what kind of practices you could use, what kind of patterns or habits that you could put in to disrupt some stuckness, if that's what you're experiencing. If you're a teacher, we'll look at some of the kind of practices, the principles, and methodologies that maybe you could share with others, people who come to your classes, and you can support others in getting energetically unstuck, physically unstuck, mentally unstuck. Let me see, I'm getting a little recording thing here. Okay. And we'll do that. So I'm going to talk for a bit and be here with you, share with you, tell you a little bit about myself in case you don't know, and then also get into some of the practices of what we work with and use in Baptiste yoga. Also, I want to talk to you a bit and share with you about hybrid level 1, which I'm super excited about to share with you. And then also there'll be a practice, a breathing based asana practice after this talking part of the masterclass here. So there'll be a breathing practice in the body. You can get on your mat. That's optional. But if you have a mat nearby, that breathing practice will give you an idea of what some of the work we do in hybrid level 1 and what it looks like to get on the mat, get, into your breath newly and see what that supports in getting unstuck. Using the breathing practice is the ujjayi breath, like that. So that's what we're up to here. Again, thank you for being here. It means a lot to get to spend this time with you. I wanted to kind of start with my background a little bit. And my parents, it all started with my parents. I was born in San Francisco to a family, my mom and dad, who really opened the first yoga center in San Francisco in the early 1950s, like that. And they were just pioneers in health and in a kind of way that was new at the time. It was cutting edge. It was definitely not a part of the social norms to be into health, yoga, physical culture, meditation, all of that. Some people back in the day would refer to my parents as like early hippies because they were early because my parents they didn't smoke pot. They were like naturalists, like totally just into nature, natural hygiene, physical culture, spiritual, development and in practical, super practical ways. And so I was born into that family. And so in a way, it's like people ask me, well, how did you get into yoga or and it was like, it was just around growing up. And it kind of is like, in a way, yoga landed on me as a kid. My parents would take my sisters and I to India on trips here and there, and we'd study at different ashrams with different teachers. And I remember being like, I think the first time we went, I was like 8 or 9 years old, and went back a few other times and like in my early teens kind of thing. But I was always like not that into it. I like the travel part and the discovering new cultures. But when we go to the ashrams, we go to the meditation sessions or go to the yoga sessions, I was like always kind of rolling my eyes, not really wanting to be there. And so, but it was just around me. Like, part of that is being a kid and kind of resisting what your parents do or what your parents like to do or what they're into. It's like kind of separating myself from them, finding my own sense of self and independence, my own identity. But I remember my parents were pretty known around town, around San Francisco, like socially and culturally, and they're in the media quite a bit because they were like, I don't know, odd or different or interesting. it's probably a good word for it, to people. So, they were in the media, and people just knew about my parents' centers and their health center and all that. And what came along with that is, so I was kind of known to be a part like of a kind of weird family. If I look at I'm 8 years old, going to school, on a bus, getting bused to school, and, being on a full school bus with kids, they chant songs about me, they call me Hare Krishna, or they just thought I was weird and different. My parents would put a banana with brown spots in my lunch bag. And I was the only kid with brown bread, wheat bread. All the other kids had like white Wonder Bread, things like that. And I was just always kind of singled out and teased for the most part. Didn't really fit in like that. But then, okay, so that's kind of how when I was growing up. And then fast forward to being about 16, 17 years old, my parents were invited to a dinner party in San Francisco for a dinner party to celebrate the visiting of BKS Iyengar. He was visiting San Francisco, giving some kind of immersion or something. And so my parents took me to that. I got introduced to Iyengar at that party, and he said to me as my parents and I were leaving, he said, "Why don't you come to my immersion tomorrow? Be there. Come tomorrow morning. Come as my guest." So I showed up and went through. It was very physically rigorous, and that was my first introduction to like more physically intense hatha yoga. Up to that point, it was more, I don't know, just kind of loosey-goosey. Hatha yoga is really nice, more soothing, but not like athletic. It was my first introduction to the physical practice as something athletic. So that lit a flame in me. I remember I was like, whoa, there's something to that. I remember leaving his immersion being just lit up, and I was like, there's something to that. Like, I didn't know that kind of yoga existed because I was athletic as a kid, and I did martial arts and surfing and things like that. So I was athletic, but I never experienced yoga practice as something athletic. It lit a flame in me. But then it kind of died off, and I went on to kind of, finish school. Now, fast forward, I'm 24 years old in Los Angeles. And I moved to San Francisco. I moved from San Francisco to LA to just get a change of pace, get away from, I don't know, all the people, all the kids I grew up with, and all the status quo. I knew I needed some kind of change. So I moved down south to LA, went to school there, and I kept yoga practice active. I started going to classes around LA, trying on different teachers. There were some Iyengar teachers there and a Iyengar center. I'd go to classes there. I'd try on different classes, things like that. And it was so good for me. I started to realize, wow, like maybe my parents weren't just, kind of Twilight Zone-y or New Agey. Maybe there's really something to this, this yoga practice, like as a way of like, because suddenly I'm on my own. I'm, going to school, I'm working, I'm dealing with life, like real life started landing on me. The stress of life, this feeling I had of just being kind of lost without real purpose. I was going to school, I was making things work, but yoga practice was the one thing I loved to do. Like I started falling in love with yoga practice, and I started practicing every day. If I wasn't going to classes, I was, practicing out of books, like light on yoga. I'd practice just every day. And I was like, sometimes 3-6 hours a day. I fell in love with it. And it became this kind of anchor for me, like a true north of my life, a place where there was just something about getting in my body, getting on a mat, getting like, taking a physical pose. There was something about coming to like triangle pose and seeing my hand and feeling my feet to the earth. It like took me out of my head. It put me like in the present moment in my body. There was something about it. I just fell in love with it. And I kept practicing it. And I was meditating 2 or 3 times a day. I was fasting 1 day every week. I would do longer fasts every 3 months. I'd do like 7 to 10 day fasts. I was, lean toward vegan. I was trying everything, macrobiotics, natural hygiene, more of like the kind of vegetarian ways. And I was just living this kind of lifestyle where I was getting my health. I was healthy. I fell in love with yoga practice. I started teaching it a little bit on the side. And that was like something I was like, wow, it was kind of like, I just wanted to be more engaged with it and share it. It was just felt natural to share it. But I was still lost. I just still felt lost in my life. I felt like I didn't really have an aim or a purpose. I was going to school and it didn't really interest me that much. Like I was learning things, but I didn't see how it fit into my life in some bigger direction or where I was going in my life. And so now fast forward a little bit, I'm about 26 years old, want to say. And I heard this teacher, a friend of mine took me or introduced me to this Jewish, like minister person, this teacher. And he started talking about meditation, firstly, as a way of like, just getting objectively, like watching yourself, watching your thoughts, watching your emotions, and I never really had practiced meditation that way before, where you like watch, like you observe, you get it more objective, like in an objective state of mind where you can observe your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences in life as you're going through life. You like practice meditation. So he started talking about this and he said something about when you sit and you really just watch your thoughts. He said, you let thoughts come up, let them go, watch them like you're sitting on the side of a river and you're watching your thoughts go by, that you're watching. He said, you may discover things about yourself that you didn't know about yourself or that were hidden in the background. So I started meditating like that. And then I started crying every time I'd sit and meditate. It was like from my gut, I'd have these deep kind of level, like sobbing, crying, and I didn't know what that was. And then the same teacher, I was listening to what he was saying, and he started talking about this idea of forgiveness and that people need to forgive their parents and that people don't realize they got resentment toward their parents. They've got judgments toward their parents. And I was like, oh, I had this like realization, a revelation of like this emotion I was feeling when I would sit and get still and quiet and meditate. The emotions I was feeling it's actually anger. It was pent up anger and hurt and sadness, mostly. I was like, what's that about? Because prior to that, I never thought of myself as an angry person or a sad person or that I had been hurt. I just wasn't going through life like that. I was like healthy and my attitude was above the line. And, I was eating well and I was lost and didn't have an aim, but I wouldn't have pinpointed that I had that much anger. And this teacher was talking about forgiveness. You need to go forgive. So I went and forgave my mom and dad. I went and the first time I went, I actually said, you know what, mom and dad, I woke up to some truth. And the truth is you messed me up and I forgive you. And I forgive you for messing me up. And then it didn't go well at all. So yeah, we didn't talk for about 1.5 years or 2 years. Then I had another kind of epiphany. I was like, wait, this actually isn't about forgiveness of like what they did to me. I mean, it may be things they did. Like my dad was just absent a lot. He was physically there, but just not available emotionally, mentally, his attention. He was critical often. And so it's like, okay, there were things and ways he was, do things he was doing toward me or ways he was being toward me. So it's like, okay, I was justified, in being, angry because he's that way but I started to see, well, actually, carrying all this around, this judgment from when I was younger is like, that's more about me. It's like, that's my responsibility. It's my life. Do I want to be that kind of person? So I went back to my parents and second time and rang their doorbell and they're like, oh no, here we go again. And I was like, no. Listen, I want to tell you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for resenting you, judging you. I forgive. I just really want to forgive. And I just want to love you both. From this day onwards, I just want to love you both. And something lifted off me, like it felt like 1,000 pounds of dead weight lifted off me. And in that moment, and actually for the rest of my mom's life, which is probably 30 years or something, I love my mom almost like I was 6 years old again. Like I just had this, I adored my mom. And I got to know my mom like I had never known her previously, 26 years of my life up to that point. I was like, and then my dad, I was like, I could just see my dad was old school. He was raised during the Depression and he was the way he was, he's like alpha male and he was just the way he was. And he loved me in his own kind of way, but I knew he loved me. And I just loved my dad until he passed away. But my point in sharing this with you is something lifted off me. And it was like right in that moment, there was like a triumph or a shift. Like my whole life opened up. It wasn't like all of a sudden my life was perfect, or it wasn't like all of a sudden I had this life purpose. It wasn't like that, but it was some big, I don't know, like weight, like a jacket. Like some kind of heavy weighted jacket dropped off of me. And I suddenly, it was just more clear. And the quality of questions started changing for me around what I want to do in life and what's interesting to me. And then, like my physical practice totally changed. I just had more energy in general. Okay, now fast forward a little bit. Maybe I'm like 28 years old. Okay, I'm 28. I'm in a hospital, like a birthing center. I probably in Los Angeles with my wife at the time, probably, I don't know, 1 a.m, something like that. My son, so we were in there, my wife had been pregnant, right? And we're in there and she's giving birth. My first son comes out. I'm holding him. The midwife hands me my son. And I was like knocked back. I was just totally knocked back. Like, whoa, like my life just completely is changing right here. Like, as I look at my son and I just felt pure love and it was like overwhelming, but I knew that up to that point, I had a revelation in that moment. All my practice, all the things I had been doing up to that point was all still focused on me. It was like, I could just live my life. I could do yoga practice. I could study philosophy. And it was just all about me. Nothing wrong with that. But suddenly I've got my son in my hands. And I'm like, wow, life's not going to be the same. In fact, life now is going to shift from me. I just got present how my life and how wired I was around just me, kind of myself and I. And again, nothing wrong with that, but it was like something opened up right there for me. And I thought, my life now is about others. It's about this son, this child. It's about, my family, suddenly I started showing up to teach classes and I have a whole different orientation. Now, suddenly I just was like so interested in whatever I was doing could be of benefit to others. And my love of yoga, it was kind of there is where my love of yoga practice and the sharing of it, leading others in the practice came together. It was like suddenly it went from just my practice and I'm, teaching a few classes on the side each week or something to, wow, this this practice can make such a difference for people. And I was just so aware of what my parents' life had been about, like contributing, creating, centers and offering classes and things that would just benefit others and give others access to health and yoga practice and meditation and healthy ways of eating and thinking and bigger kind of thinking about life. And it all came together for me, like my parents and the lineage, kind of the legacy they handed me. Okay, I had my son and this lineage of like paying it forward. And it was then that I got right there. It was just my whole life, the way I would show up to teach a class. I was there early. I would have lesson plans. I was just eager to share, to contribute, and just my life became more about others. Not perfect, but that was my general orientation. It definitely took an unlearning process of lots of ways of like just living around just my own kind of doing of things. But it's like over time, I was like, my whole context was about how can I share the practices? How can I, contribute to others? Because I also got that, wow, as I do that for others, I'm also giving myself something, giving myself a gift. It's like I went from me to we, and it was through others that I got to have what I really wanted as well. As I got to learn as I was, teaching, we could say, as a great teacher. So it's like, as I'm learning, I'm like a student and I'm sharing things with others and I'm getting to learn them myself. So it was like, wow, what a pretty great setup in life to be able to be a student and I'm sharing things that as I'm learning them, I'm growing, I'm learning and making it available to others and those who are interested. It's like, wow, it's like I was pretty lit up in my life from that point. And I'll tell you one main thing that kept me kind of above water, like when you take on having a new family or you take on, more responsibility in life, more stresses, more challenges, more difficulties. Yeah, more newer responsibilities. The one thing maybe I'll say two things, was always right there at the center for me was that physical practice. The physical asana practice is just a ground wire, into my body, back to my breath, back to just clearing my head, clearing my eyes, clearing things out of the way, and with meditation. It was like meditation, to sit still and practice that way, just of observing thoughts and observing my experience and letting things come up and learning to let things go and developing that fitness of my ability to witness as well as let things go. The muscle called letting go, developing that kind of muscle and musculature. And so it as I was teaching and leading, fast forward to today, it's like what kind of evolved was this practice called I refer to as Journey into Power, the Journey into Power practice, which many of you know. That practice, the 11 sequences of Journey into Power. And it's like, okay, there's something about getting into each pose of each sequence that has like impact just in the body and the mind and awakens breath and energy. But then as from a young teacher to like more experienced, I started realizing, wow, it's not so necessarily so much about the forms of each sequence, the poses of each sequence. Those are like tools. The poses are like tools, but it's the intention of each sequence. So each of the 11 sequences, 11 intentions. So the bigger, grander intention of Journey into Power is exactly that. The title, it's a journey into power. It takes you into a place of power. So part of going through all 11 sequences, you're giving stuff up or clearing things out of the way or moving energy that awakens you to power, a new sense of power, Yeah, we could use power. The word power is, I think in the dictionary, it's something like the ability to act and make something happen, something like that. And so we could use it like that. Okay, the ability to act and get into action to disrupt stuckness, right? Like we're talking about here, or disrupt inertia. Could use, the thing with yoga is the mind aspect, the mind to disrupt disempowering views of your body, outlooks of your body, outlook on life, outlook on people, places, things, the ability to shift through the practice, like the first sequence, integration. So you have some poses there, 3 or 4 postures of integration sequence. Use those as tools to fulfill on integration, to get integrated. Your body, the parts of your body getting integrated into your center and core, we could say, are getting integrated into the present moment, your hands and feet on the floor, the earth, the integration of your breath with your movements, the drishti, the eye gaze with the movements. So it's like, then you go into the next second sequence, awakening sequence. Take a series of poses that, awaken your energy. They like the morning sun, the rising of the morning sun, awaken your energy. They move things through your body, move things out. There's an awakening. You just kind of wake up heat, inner heat, what we call the tapas, the purifying heat. The vitality sequence, the series of postures, a lot of twists in the vitality sequence. You take each of those postures as tools to rinse out from the inside out, to rinse, to, kind of cleanse, to shift in such a way that you're left just feeling more like, oh, just open, like the channels are open and the faucet's turned on, and there's a greater sense of vitality, energy, like that. The sequences just work like that. Or you could fast forward to the igniting sequence, series of back bends we take. Each of those poses, again, are like tools, and those back bends are just to ignite. To ignite what? Well, to ignite something that is an alternative to maybe how you started feeling, to ignite energy. Is that it for you? Maybe to ignite a sense of just strength, in your body, to develop confidence. It's simple, like back bends are interesting like that. Those kind of poses tools is like, well, how would that develop confidence? Well, you start taking that series of back bends and you do that consistently, day in, day out, week in, week out. Over time, you start developing a body confidence. It just starts coming, because back bends also, you're moving in reverse to the usual ways of moving with gravity, or to gravity, or from gravity. So it's like suddenly you're moving and opposing and working with opposing forces. And it's like you start developing a kind of body confidence, and you stand a little taller, and you walk through your day with your shoulders back, or your spine a little longer, and your eyes a little clearer. But you start relating these different sequences, like the opening sequence, the hip openers. You start noticing, you take those poses, and it's like, wow, when I start opening the muscles around my pelvis and the center of my body, it's like my legs get freed up, my back, my torso, my general just movement, functional movement through life. It's more easeful, more freer, more just kind of functional strength as you move through your day. And you just feel good. You feel like open. You start putting these different sequences together, like the rejuvenation sequence, the inversions, going upside down. And there's something about just turning life upside down, or your flow, the actual blood flow, the flow of chemistry gets altered. You go upside down, things shift, things get altered. And but this is what I want to say, to disrupt the experience of being stuck. The sequences are so powerful. So I invite you Like, do the practice, try on the different sequences. I'll take you through a breathing practice at the end of this. You'll have the option to go through this breathing Ujjayi practice with some of the sequences from Journey into Power. And just notice as you go through that breathing practice, how you feel after. Like, what do you discover from that? And I'd say if you practice at those sequences daily and newly, part of it's newly. That's the value of like hybrid level 1. You can practice from home, in your own time. In hybrid level 1, I take you through a series of different classes and practices. And again, today's practice, it's pre-recorded. That's one of the practices from the hybrid level 1. And these practices, you focus on one thing, like Ujjayi breath, a breathing practice with the asanas. Or we do a practice where you focus on drishti, the attention's just on the drishti and the power of drishti, cultivating drishti. Another practice is focused on the center line and core, the center line, the power of your center, and discovering the bandhas. And the other thing we work with in hybrid level 1, but I want to bring it forward here for all of you or any of you, whether you're doing hybrid level 1 or not, is the 5 organizing principles of True North alignment. So the first organizing principle is be intentional in creating the physical foundation of the pose and be up to something bigger than yourself. The being up to something bigger than yourself is having a vision for your practice, like a target, an aim, just up to something bigger. It could be like, I just want to shift out of this feeling of being stuck or having fear or having anxiousness, kind of run the show. I want to do something for myself, like self first, different than selfish, but self first. I want to have a vision, and then I'm going to be intentional in creating the physical foundation of every pose I take, on the yoga mat. But I'm also going to be intentional in creating the physical foundation of every part and area of my life off the yoga mat as well. Like how I set up my the physical domain of my life, how I set up my the order in my house or home or where you live, or how you set up, to have meetings with people, or how you're setting up foundations in such a way that you can grow. They're in support of fulfilling on a bigger vision, something that's bigger than, when we say bigger than yourself, it's bigger than the self you now know. Well, you know yourself and you know who you are, but the self you could be, like the realization of your potential. And it's simple. It doesn't have to be a big fancy thing, but you want to tap that vision. Probably you were born with it, and that inner vision. And then every posture you take on the mat, you practice being intentional in creating the physical foundation of the pose. The second organizing principle is balanced action, stability, and freedom. There's that balance of being relaxed and also being firm, steadfast, committed, doing what you say you're going to do in life off the mat. Doing what you say you're going to do consistently builds confidence. So showing up and seeing if you want to teach, you start practicing these things for yourself, and then you evolve that as you share them to others. They evolve in you, kind of thing. The third organizing principle we call the 5 pillars of the practice, and it's drishti, your eye gaze. You're literally training your gaze, like where you set your eyes on the prize of the present moment, or your eyes on where you want to go on the mat, in a pose, or in life. Drishti, Ujjayi, the breath. The third pillar is bandhas, and training the center line core and the There's 5 bandhas we work with in Baptiste methodology. Tapas and vinyasas. So tapas is a healing heat. That's the 4th pillar. The 5th is vinyasas, the flow. So you're moved from the inside out, and also you're moved by something maybe bigger than yourself, like your vision. And you're just flowing point to point or pose to pose or through the transitions. So part of the training, like in hybrid level 1, part of the training is, so everything in hybrid level 1 is pre-recorded content. And then what's peppered in is like live Zoom, like coaching calls, you could say, or training. You'll work with trainers, you'll work with myself, and you'll study and go through the modules of methodology, meditations, their practices. There's a boatload of content. You have time. You have 6 weeks to go through this. You have live Zoom calls where we'll coach you, answer your questions, help you deepen and broaden whatever you're learning or focusing on that week. I also take you through some inquiry sessions. An inquiry is essentially working with your attitude and your outlook. You could say it's your views and your attitudes. And so like we look at your fear. Is fear holding you back in your practice, in your leading yourself, your own life, or in leading others? And in your life, fear. Just to be able to distinguish fear, see how your relationship to fear. I'll take you through some session exercises where you start distinguishing fear, looking at fear newly, so you can dance with fear rather than be owned by fear. Then, especially if you want to start sharing with others, like leading others in practices, fear can stop us. There's maybe just from the last 1.5 years with the pandemic, you've been confronted by this feeling of fear. So we work with fear. We do another like kind of inquiry look on and around judgments. Like, are you stuck in like judgments or complaints that hold you back in a way similar to like what I shared about like with my parents? Like that was something monumental. I didn't see that before. It's just an outlook. It was just suddenly I was able to look and see like, whoa, in me, I had like this unfinished business with my parents. And I was like, I didn't know that. I didn't until I saw it. And then I was able to do something with that, give it up. And then it was a practice. It became a practice. And though it was such a kind of a opening for me to shift my view, to see what was actually going on with me. So we do exercises around that. We do exercises around, well, what is it to be an authentic teacher, to share from your own voice? So in level 1, you'll discover your authentic voice on the mat and in leading, but also, in leading others, and also just off the mat. Like, what is it to be, from your authentic voice? Just you authentically, being yourself, being uncanned, unscripted, kind of like I am here now. It's like, I like coming up with plans and leading from a plan, but I'm like, no, actually, I want to lead just straight from the heart today with you and just share and just put my voice out, just uncanned, unscripted, like that. And in level 1, you also go through we do some goal setting, like targets, like what's your vision for the rest of your life after level 1. And you'll set some targets. You'll come out of level 1 with a plan, like of where you're going and what you want to accomplish. It's amazing when you do that kind of work, how, fast forward a year and you look back, you're like, whoa, everything I wrote down, I completed. Like that happened. And if not everything, then okay, a few things didn't. You could bring those forward if you still want them, or maybe you realize, I wanted those a year ago. Now I'm not even interested in those things. But it's amazing how that as its own kind of practice is really powerful with the physical practice. The fourth, let me back up a little. The fourth organizing principle of True North alignment is just a total body and mind integration into your true north. So that's aligning your mind, your vision, what you're up to, what you're wanting to be up to, maybe what you were born to do in life, but aligning mind, your body, and being, this total body and self-integration. That's the fourth organizing principle. And we take you through different methodologies to kind of simple methods, but to get the total integration. And then the fifth organizing principle of True North alignment is total expression. So in level 1, you'll develop also, like through the 5 organizing principles, you'll learn how to kind of be in, you'll discover a self-expression that works for you, that you want, and that is like consistent with who you are and what you want for yourself. So part of why I'm bringing this forward is you don't have to ever attend level 1, or maybe some of you already have, but to get unstuck, consider these are the tools. And one thing I'm committed to in like hybrid level 1 is giving you the tools. But consider I just gave you the tools, or the tools are in my book, Journey into Power. You could look right there. It's all kind of right there, and do it on your own. But it's the doing of the practices. It's the using of the tools. And here's the thing, like we teach you principles. Our methodology is all principle based. So it's like you practice principles, not poses. Those are the forms that we practice, the poses, but it's really what we're practicing is the substance of the poses, the principles. When you learn the principles, you can, you don't need me, you don't need a teacher. You can actually discover for yourself on your mat, when you're practicing principles, you're in this process, this wonderful process of self-discovery. You're just discovering what works in your body, what doesn't work. Discovering, who you are, who you're not. You're discovering for yourself. So you're living from your own insights, your own inner sight, and your own answers, not someone else's answers. That's the default for humanity is, we get other people's answers. We hear from different experts or mentors or teachers, and we rely on other people's answers or their conclusions. And part of our whole methodology is for you to you don't need the middleman. You don't need to follow someone. You follow yourself. You apply the tools, you apply the practices, and they work. And when they don't work, you're just like Sherlock Holmes in there. You're like researching what does work, and you find what works for you. But that is a bigger kind of context of the program. Is we give you things to think with and think from. Not so much. We don't tell you how to think. It's more exploratory. It's more experiential, embodied learning. So 2 things I want to leave you with. Get on the mat. Just get on the mat. And you'll have the opportunity to get on the mat right after, in a few minutes, as we complete here with me. But get on the mat. Just get on the mat and do something. And you'll start noticing, if you focus on the intention, fulfilling the intention of each sequence, it's interesting how you breathe for equanimity. You breathe for vitality. In every pose, in the vitality, you contract the muscles of the body, and you integrate the bones, and every movement, every gaze, if you just get on the mat for 20 minutes, but you're fully in it. You're up to something bigger than yourself. You're being intentional and creating the physical foundation. You do it, you just do the actions. It's pretty amazing how things get unstuck. And it may not be the whole of what you need in your life to get unstuck. But I'll tell you, the physical practice and meditation, two tools right there, super powerful in shifting things and altering things. And you're a different human being by putting those in your life. Yeah, compared to if you don't. And we all know what it's like to not. So I just want to leave you with that practice. Again, I want to invite you to hybrid level 1, which you'll have I lead you through a whole bunch of meditations, and there are physical practices. As I said, there's a lot of workshops I lead you through. I take you step by the hand, kind of step by step through the methodology. It's simple, it's straightforward, totally learnable. If you're in it to teach or you want to learn how to instruct, awesome. Level 1's amazing. It's produced just thousands of phenomenal, best-in-class teachers and instructors. And though if you don't want to teach, a lot of people just participate for the immersion because they want to unstick themselves, or they sense something, there's something more in life or with their life to experience. So the beautiful thing about hybrid level 1 is, again, you have 6 weeks, so you can complete it in your own time from anywhere in the world. You don't have to, for years, people would tell me, I want to come to level 1, Baron, but I just can't attend in person. I can't take the time out. I can't, the expense of travel and time, and I can't do it. So it's like, there's kind of been this request for a lot of years is like, well, how do we bring level 1 to people, that wouldn't attend in person? The pandemic comes along and it's like, okay, can we do level 1 online? Firstly was my thought. And I'm like, okay, if we do level 1 online, I want to make sure that everything in the in-person training, learning how to lead others in the practice. The best way of learning is, teaching others something, right? So you learn it for yourself, the methodology, the practice. We do that online, and then you can share it and practice teaching it, leading others in it. That can all happen. So we've designed the program so that you get the same results as if participating in person. There's always that thing of being in person and the community that arises from in person. Look, some of you don't even want, part of why maybe you don't go to an in-person training is because you kind of don't want to deal with a group of people. I get that too. So it's like kind of perfect. You can do it in your own time, and the content's all pre-recorded again, so you can re-watch. Sometimes in person level 1, we just do one session and it's done. We do another session, it's done. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant. But with the pre-recorded, you can watch again and again and again and let it sink in. You can really just let it percolate and assimilate, and you can practice it. And so it's kind of the beauty of it. But I hope to see you there. And thank you for being with me in this masterclass. Boy, I haven't talked this much in a while. So thank you all. And I look forward to it. So get your mat out if you're wanting to practice today. It's a really cool practice, this breathing practice. It's very cool. I take you through a series of vinyasas, and from some of the postures and sequences of Journey to Power. It's about 40 minutes in length. So it's neat, it's efficient, and it's potent. So do it. If you can pull out your mat, get on the mat and just practice along. And I look forward to being with you soon, hopefully in hybrid level 1. And if not, till next time, be well.